Fathom Realty. Glad you guys could come in and take a look at this video. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a while since I've actually uploaded anything. Long story short, I got sick with COVID, followed by my wife, followed by my daughter. And so we were just at home kind of dealing with that, trying to stay safe and keep everyone else around us safe as well. As promised, we're going to go over the as-is residential contract for sale and purchase. This is the most common contract that you're going to be filling out as a buyer. And as a first-time home buyer, you know, it could be overwhelming seeing a 12-page document that you have no idea what it means. So what I want to do is just go over it. So when that time comes for you to purchase your property, to purchase your home, you're familiar with this piece of document, with this contract, and it doesn't become overwhelming. And hopefully I can answer most of your questions. You're probably going to still have some questions afterwards. Perfectly normal, but if I could just give you the main topics, the main things on this contract for you to watch out to make sure that you and your money are protected, I think I'll be doing you guys a great service. So let's go ahead and just go over this really quick. So the beginning part, guys, is really simple, right? Parties. Obviously, that's going to be the seller and the buyer. So the seller and you. Once you're a buyer and you're looking to buy the property, you become that buyer. Property description, guys. This is basically saying the address. Where is this property located, right? The address is located in Palm Beach County. You have a tax ID for tax purposes, and the legal description is another way to describe the property. And so that way all these things line up, and we know we're talking about, hey, this specific property in this specific area, this specific lot. And that's what the legal description is. It really tells you, hey, it's lot 22 of this plat, and if you looked at a plat map, it would make a lot more sense, but that's how they get the legal description. But just to make it simple, the legal description is basically, hey, where does this home sit on the map? Right, and so with this, once you get into a contract, right, because once you turn this in, when you've signed this, it's an offer. Once the seller signs it, that's when it becomes a binding contract. We're going to go to paragraph D here. So if they sign the contract, right, and they accept your offer, everything that's in this paragraph D is going to be included. Sorry about that. Included in the sale of the property. All right, starting with, look, range, ovens, refrigerators, dishwasher, disposal, ceiling fans, intercom, light fixtures, drapery, rods and draperies, blinds, window treatment, smoke detectors, garage door openers, security gate, other access devices, and storm shutters and panels. Right, all those would be included unless otherwise noted. So unless they were excluded from the contract, which is wherever you want to exclude something if you ever become a seller. But right now, this is focused more towards buyer. But if it was written here, these would be excluded. Sometimes in the MLS listing, the realtor, the agent, the listing agent would say, hey, this is not included. And so you would want to include this in that section, whatever is not included from there. Now, one thing that is not normally included with the sale, at least is not written in the contract, is the washer and dryer, right? To wash your clothes, dry your clothes. So normally I would go ahead and add that into the contract unless it was otherwise noted by the listing agent or the seller that, hey, they're not including the washer and dryer. Remember, contracts are completely negotiable. So even if they say it's not included, you can still write it in there and see if you can get it. All right, everything is negotiable in real estate and a contract. I'll say, for instance, they didn't want to give you the refrigerator. Boom. In here, they might counter offer and say, hey, we're taking this fridge with us, and it's excluded from the contract. But if it's not in here, boom, if it's erased, the fridge is included as part of section D or paragraph D of this contract. Awesome. So now that's just the beginning part saying, hey, we're buying this property at this place from this person with these items in it. Now, purchase price. This is what are you paying for the property. Right, and so this is not what it's listed for. This is what you're offering. In this market, to be honest with you, it's hard to get it's really hard to get anything lower than asking price, but it is possible. But yeah, let's just go ahead. So for instance, purchase price. Let's say the property is $200,000. Boom. So it's gonna be a $200,000 home. Your initial deposit. We've talked about escrow deposit, guys. This is basically an initial deposit that you put in to say, hey, I want this property, and it gets held by a title company. I always describe a title company as the referee of the transaction, right? They're a third party. They're not on the seller side. They're not on the buyer side, but they make sure everything is done correctly and the contract's upheld. And so, for instance, let's say, hey, $5,000 is a decent escrow deposit, and it's going to be accompanied with the offer, right? So when you put the offer, you would deposit this check right away. I don't ever do this. Usually it's to be made within 3 days, right? Because I want the offer to be accepted before we start putting money out there. All right, I want to say, hey, listen, if you accept the offer, my buyers, you will go ahead and deposit this $5,000, which is you're putting some skin in the game, right? And this part right here, this is why we have to make sure that you follow and understand this contract, and that we meet all deadlines, because it could get tricky if you don't follow the contract, and they can say, hey, well, because you wasted our time and we had the house off market and we could have sold to somebody else, but you failed to keep the contract, you failed to buy the house for whatever reason, they could claim the 5,000. You could get into dispute. Rarely happens, but you want to make sure that you're protected. Same thing. If they fail, you're obligated, or if you cancel the contract according to what you're allowed to in the contract, you get the $5,000 back. 99.9% of the time, if the deal fell through, you're going to get that $5,000 back. Hopefully the deal doesn't fall through and you guys are solid, and boom, you guys are closing on your house. All right, now the escrow agent name, this is the title company. So this is where the $5,000 would be going to. The escrow, well, it doesn't have to be a title company, but the escrow agent. And so this is the person who's going to be holding on to the money. Usually it is the title company for the most part, not always. But this escrow agent is the one that's holding on to the money. And you would just put their information on here, right? So let's just say John Smith is the escrow agent at 123, say Banana Street. Boom, phone number, email, fax. You want to make sure you have their information. If you don't have that information, you don't have a binding contract. It's important that you actually we have that in there. Boom, boom. So now you see $200,000, $5,000 deposit. You see this $195 here. This is how much is due at closing, right? So there's a few sections here, right? Additional deposit. If you want to put additional deposits, some people put additional deposits after they do the inspection. Say, hey, we want to make sure everything is good. Then we'll put another $5,000 afterwards. Usually I just say we're going to put whatever we're going to put up front within those 3 days. Next is C, it's financing. So let's go ahead and just say you're putting 20% down on this home, right? That means you're financing 80%, right? Boom, 80%. Boom. That means to close this out, that means 20% down, it turns out to be $40,000, but this $5,000 is already in escrow, and this would be used for the rest of your down payment, right? So all you would have to bring to the closing table for your down payment, this is not including closing costs, just for the 20% would be $35,000. Also, you would have your closing costs, as we've talked in other videos, that you would have to pay as well. I'll just say you're doing a 3% down, 97%. Boom, if you put $5,000 down, all you would have to bring for your down payment, right, not including closing costs, is $1,000. Your closing costs will probably, on a $200,000 house, are probably about $6,000, $7,000, somewhere around there. Now, the next important part is time for acceptance of the offer. So like I said, it's an offer until it's signed, right? It's not a contract. It's not a binding contract till it's signed. So today is the 15th, I believe. So let's say we write up this contract today. Usually I like to give the agent at least 24 hours, right? They want to get it to their clients. They have to review it, whatnot. So we're going to have to say time for acceptance is the 16th. So guess what? Say if you found a house tomorrow on the 16th, they never signed this paper, and you decide, hey, I really like this house. And on the 17th, they never send this back. This is no longer a valid offer. The offer has expired. Even if they signed it, it's already too late. You wanted to move on to another house, you're free to do so. So this is what the time for acceptance, when the seller has to accept the offer by. And so as long as they sign before this, it becomes a binding contract. If they sign afterwards, we would have to update this time of acceptance and then get them to initial. Now, closing date. This is the day that you want to close in the home. This is the day that, hey, the title, the ownership transfers from their name to your name. So usually you want to do this within a month or 45 days is what it's going to take, especially for the banks, for the lenders. It's been really busy, a lot of refinances. So I would say minimum 30 days, up to 45 days, depending on the lender and your financial situation. So let's go ahead and let's just say today's the 15th, so 30 days would be the 15th. Let's go ahead and we're going to go do the 20th of April, right? So just a little bit over 30 days, might give us a little leeway, and this would be the closing date. Right, unless modified by other provisions of this contract, the closing of this transaction shall occur, and the closing documents required to be furnished by each party pursuant to this contract shall be delivered on April 20th, at the time established by the closing agent, which would be the title company. Right, and so there's different reasons that we could extend the closing date. Um, won't get into too much of that now. Occupancy and possession. So this is, you hear number 6 is saying, hey, at the sale of the property, you, the seller, is going to go ahead and deliver occupancy and possession of the property to the buyer, free of tenants, no one inside the house. It is your house, free and clear. So that's what A is, unless B is checked. So if you're buying like an investment property, maybe they have it leased out or something, and it's saying, hey, if it's checked, that means we're giving you this property, but it's coming with tenants in there. Biggest thing with tenants, if they have a contract, you would have to honor that contract. So obviously, if you're buying a house for yourself, you want to make sure there's no tenants in there because you want to be able to move right away. And honestly, you never know about tenants. Some of them could be difficult, and you don't want to have to evict or kick anyone else out after their contract or their lease expires. I would try to put that, if this is your property that you're going to move into, I would try to leave that to the seller and say, hey, we don't want anyone at that house at all. Most times that won't be the case, but you do have people renting out homes and they have a contract for another 2 months, and people want to buy the house before anyone else gets it. Da 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 da. But for the most part, you're going to be able to get owner. You're going to be able to move in and have occupancy and possession of that property at closing. Now, assignability. So you really won't have to worry about this. Like I said, if you're moving into the property, it's going to be your primary residence. Usually, I put may not assign this contract. Now, assignability is going to be more for people who are investors, maybe buying a property under their business name or something like that. So, buyer may assign and thereby be released from any further liability of this contract. Wholesalers do this. What they do is they get a contract on a property, usually lots or something like that, and then they try to sell the contract off to somebody else for a few $1,000s, and then boom, hey, we're going to sell this contract to you for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and now you have the contract, and you are able to purchase this property, and so you're assigning the contract to somebody else. Right, and this, once they do that, they're released from liability. Then you also have may assign but not released from liability, saying, hey, you could assign it, but if something happens with that, you're still liable. But like I said, most of the time, if you're buying for yourself, if this is the first-time home buyers, page also, this is targeted first-time home buyers. So usually it's may not assign this contract. This makes it simple because you're not going to be assigning it to anyone else because you're buying it for yourself. Now, financing. So this section here, Section 8, is going to be how are you paying for the property? You're either paying for cash or you're getting a lease. Now, there's a few other ways, but those are the two most popular ones. If you're a first-time home buyer, you're most likely financing, right? So A, you're buying cash, right? There's no financing contingency, nothing like that. But for our purposes, we're going to click on B. This contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining approval of A. Now, depending on what you've been pre-approved for is how we're going to go ahead and fill out this next section. So if you're an FHA conventional, it all depends. For this purposes, let's just click on conventional, right? Boom, it's contingent on getting a conventional loan within, normally it's 30 days. 30 days. Now, guys, this date is important because if there's issues with getting your loan and you can't get an approval within 30 days, you're going to want to get a cancellation to make sure you don't lose that $5,000, right? So if for some reason the bank can approve you, you has to be within the 30-day window, or else it could be, there could be a battle for that $5,000 saying, hey, it's been 31 days. You're supposed to get us an answer within 30 days if you're going to get a loan approval or not, and therefore you broke the contract, right? You defaulted on the contract. They could go ahead and try to claim that $5,000, right? Days after effective date. All right, so important to, you have to your lender, and these dates, and I know as your realtor, I keep everything in a calendar to make sure that we do not go ahead and default on any of these things. Now, so if left blank, then 30 days. I always put it in though after effective date. Now, this is gonna be what type of interest rates you're applying for. To be honest with you, with the rates how they are now, fixed is gonna be the way to go. I do not like adjustable. If you guys don't, I'll go into maybe a different video on what adjustable is. Adjustable, it means it could change throughout throughout the life of your mortgage. So it could go up, it could go down, and you're really never going to be sure what your interest rates is. So it could jump up your interest rates by a lot of dollars monthly, if interest rates happen to go up during that season, during that time. Like I said, interest rates are super low right now, so getting it fixed will be the best bet. And you'll know what your payment and what your interest rates are for 30 years. for 30 years, if you're doing a 30-year, you can do a 15-year loan, but you'll know what it is. So at an initial interest rate not to exceed. So if you're looking for an interest rate, usually I leave it blank because it could be on the prevailing rate, because I can't tell you what the rates are going to be. Rates change daily. But say right now you probably could get it close to 3%, 3.1, 3.2%. If you want to put, hey, I don't want it to go above 4%. And then if say they couldn't get you, the only rate they could get you was a 4.1, you could go ahead and get out of this contract because you could not get you did not meet this requirement. The bank did not meet this requirement of you having less than a 4.0 interest rate on there. Now for a term of, now you're applying for a 30-year mortgage. Now if you do a 15-year mortgage, you could get lower interest rates. Obviously your monthly payments could be higher, but you're going to be able to pay off that mortgage a lot quicker. All right, buyer shall make mortgage loan application for the financing within usually 5 days. All right, so this is saying once you get the offer, now it's time for you to go to your lender, say, hey, listen, we put this in, I need to apply for the loan, and they begin collecting everything you need and submitting all your paperwork so they can begin the loan process. All right, now here, line 95, buyers fail to use diligent effort to obtain loan approval during the loan approval period shall be considered a default under the terms of this contract. All right, so it's important that as a process, as your realtor, I'm going to make sure that you're on top. I'm going to be talking to your lender, talking to yourself, making sure these things are moving forward and everyone's doing what they need to do to make sure that this deal is moving forward. That way we could get to the closing table. Right, and so that's what that is, right? Because if you're not doing diligent effort, they could say, hey, well, they didn't try hard enough to make sure that the loan was going to go through. We're going to skip some of this because this doesn't really pertain. I mean, it does, but it's a lot of jargon. You guys understand the basics of it, right? So, guys, here, we're not going to go over every single thing. These are different closing costs. It could be a little bit different. This is costs to be paid by the seller, costs to be paid by the buyer. Leave it on here. Take a little picture. But, right, your buyer's going to be loan expenses. You're going to have to pay for the appraisal, which is what you probably pay the lender for that. Obviously, you have inspections, and any other thing that could be related to the sale of the property if you're going into an HOA. So different things that you're going to be paying as a buyer for closing costs, right? This is not part of your down payment. This is separate from down payment. It's closing costs. Average maybe 3%. I always say at least 3% of the total sales price is going to be your closing costs. Now, title, evidence, and insurance, at least 15 days prior to closing. Now, title evidence is basically title companies going to go ahead and pull up the records and making sure that the title is free and clear, and then also issuing title insurance. Now, title insurance is going to be a protection for you. Just to say, Jane Doe is selling you this house, but Jane Doe has a sister named, Jennifer Doe. And Jennifer Doe, after the sale of the property, says, well, no, the house should have been to mine because when our parents died, they left the house to both of us. All right, that should be on public record. If there is two owners, they both would have to sign it. But that would protect you and say, hey, you have this insurance, would protect you from that actually happening and making sure that you maintain ownership of that property. So that's what the title insurance is there for. Now here, seller shall designate closing. Sorry about that. Seller shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges, or the buyer shall designate closing agent. So closing agent is usually the title company. In Palm Beach County, it is just the norm. Like I said, everything is negotiable. Nothing is set in stone. But the seller shall choose and pay. Listen, what's the seller pay? Why pay more if you don't have to? Most title companies, they have to act as a third party. Legally, they can't side from one side or the other. Some people prefer. I work with some investors. They like to use their own title company. Like I said, their investors a little bit different. But for the most part, the seller picks, and they're paying for the owner's policy and charges. Let them pay for that. So we're going to leave that on there for right now. All right, we're not going to go over the Miami-Dade because we're not in Miami-Dade or Broward. You might be buying a home down there. But like I said, I'm focused here on Palm Beach. Now, survey. Definitely want to have a survey done, which is going to basically just let you know about the boundaries of the property. Now, home warranty. Now, home warranty, guys, the home warranty is usually for the inside, for the appliances and stuff on the house. If you're buying a resale, you're most likely not going to have a home warranty, so it's not available. But this is dictates who is paying for the warranty. Some people will give warranties. You can have the seller pay, or you can pay for the warranty, not to exceed this much money here. And that's based whatever we decide. Let's just put $8.99. Boom. It's usually a lot less than that. I'm just throwing numbers in there. Now, special assessments. Special assessments are costs or liens imposed by a public body, right? We could say through an HOA or through the city. So say you live right on a street. Boom, you live on 79th Street. The county's coming in. They have to repave the road. Well, they could throw special assessments on you through taxes. And if you live in an HOA and they're doing some projects, they could go ahead and throw some special assessments on you to the owners. So this is really important. Usually what I'm doing, I put seller shall pay the assessment in full or prior to or at the time of closing, right? Because let's just say, hey, the special assessment's a $2,000 that the HOA put on to repave the roads. I'm just throwing that out as an example, right? So the seller could go ahead and pay it for installments. But the thing is, they have to continue paying, and what would they stop paying? It's better for them to just pay it all up front. You don't have to deal with it. Guess what? It's out of your hair. It doesn't become an issue if for some reason the seller disappears or anything bad happens to them. It's just better, hey, get it all paid for. You don't have to deal with that, have them pay it all. So usually sellers shall pay the assessment in full prior to or at the time of closing. If you don't check on this, guess what? You're stuck paying those assessments. So you want to make sure you check one of them at least. If you don't check it, you're stuck paying those things, and it's better to have the seller pay them, at least for your pocket. So disclosure is rate on gas, naturally occurring gas. You can get an inspection for that. These are just some disclosures, permit disclosures. The seller has to let you know about any permits on the property. Mold, there could possibly be mold on the property. If you're concerned about it, you want to get a professional to get it inspected. Flood zone, we live in South Florida, guys, so there are areas that require flood insurance. So you really want to get that checked. You have 20 days. Boom, boom. If you leave it blank, it's 20 days to make sure you're able to get that flood insurance. Unless you live in a low flood zone, then you probably don't need it. But if you live in a high flood zone, moderate flood zone, you're going to need some type of flood insurance. So it all really depends on where you're moving. That's going to be very case dependent, but you're always going to have time to make sure. And obviously, your lender and they're going to go ahead and do what they need to do to confirm that you don't live in a flood zone or that you do live in a flood zone and if you need flood insurance. So energy brochure, we just talk about, hey, getting a brochure and how the energy expenditure of your house, depending on this, depending on that. Lead paint is if it's house was built in 1978. They use lead paint. So guys, if you move into Lake Worth or something like that, there's a lot of older houses, so you would have to put a lead paint disclosure, and you have to sign that part of your contract. But yeah, I mean, you don't find lead-based paint anymore. Even if it is an older house, it's already been taken out. Homeowners Association disclosure. This is also going to be an addendum. Basically, the seller has to provide you with the information of the HOA, their rules, their covenants, their regulations, also any type of fees that they charge on a monthly basis or yearly basis. Everything needs to be disclosed. Property tax disclosure. Hey, do not rely on what the seller's current property tax is, because the taxes are going to change depending on what you buy the property for and whether you homestead the house or not. I definitely want to homestead. I'll probably do a video on homestead. That way, it's going to save you a lot of money on taxes. But that's what that is. Now, if you're dealing with someone who is a foreign person, who's a citizen of a different country, you would have to fill out a FIRPTA, the FIRPTA, Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. And then seller's disclosure. A seller disclosure is just a seller saying, hey, this has happened in the house. We've had a leaks here. We've had that. So even if it's fixed, they have to let you know that this has happened. Or if there is any issues with the house, it has to be disclosed, right? It is illegal for a seller to know of an issue, right? That's not visible, right? If I walk in the house and I see there's a crack on the ceiling, the seller doesn't have to tell me that because I can see that with my eye, right? But maybe the trusses inside the attic are falling down. I can't walk in the house and see that. So if they know about that, they would have to disclose it. If they don't, there could be some legal, they could be some legal trouble. Obviously, we would have to prove that they did know about it and therefore should have told us. Property maintenance, basically saying, hey, listen, they have to maintain the property while it's under contract. As we're in the process of buying this house, they can't just let it fall apart. They got to keep up with it. Because hey, you saw the house. This is the house you're buying. They can't go ahead and destroy the walls or let anything happen. Right? They have to maintain the property. Property inspection, this is really important. In this market, to be honest, the normal is going to be 7 to 10 days. Let's go ahead and just put 7 days. You want to get the inspector. They're going to go inspect. What they inspect is going to be basically they're going to do an insurance inspection. Which is what that way the banks can see the condition of your house, and it's going to really dictate the amount that you pay in homeowners insurance. Then also to see other things that issues. And once you have the inspection, you have 7 days to inspect it and renegotiate with the seller. Sometimes the seller says no, and if you like the house, you're going to have to buy it in the condition that it is. That's kind of really in this market. It's been crazy, and haven't been a lot of sellers aren't negotiating. You get some really good sellers. Every seller is different. No one's the same. Everyone sells differently. Everyone's a different personality. But right now, there's a lot of competition for homes. So the sellers are giving very little when it comes to renegotiations. The walkthrough the day before or the day of, you have the option, not the option. You should go ahead and actually walk through the property and make sure nothing has changed in the property. Right, to make sure, if we put the washer and dryer in that section up there, and if we go there on the day before and the washer and dryer is not there, hey, listen, where's our washer and dryer? We're not going to close on this. On the contract, that says this is included in the purchase, and if it's not there, you don't close on it. All right, seller assistance and cooperation and close out of building permit. So the seller has to go, by all means, go ahead and do his best to close out any permits. So they did work on the roof, did work on plumbing. You have to pull a permit out from the city, and the seller has to make sure that he does everything in his power to make sure those are closed. Those permits are closed before closing. It's an assignment of repair and treatment contracts and warranty. So they just saying, hey, you could assign. So say they say, and a big thing that gets assigned is termite treatment, right? People buy yearly termite treatment. And it's warranted with the company. So that gets transferred over to the buyer. And that way, hey, if termites came onto the property, guess what? It was treated. It's still under warranty. Even though the seller paid for it, that gets transferred over to you. And you can go ahead and claim that warranty, and the termite company will have to come back out. So escrow agent, like I said, guys, this is the escrow agent that's going to say, hey, they have to be competent. They have to do everything in their power legally to make sure the funds are collected and do what they have to do. This would be the broker liability. Basically what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, what we're allowed to tell you, what we're not allowed to tell you. I cannot tell you anything. I can show you the inspection, and I can, hey, this is what it is, but I can't walk into houses and say, hey, that's an issue, that's an issue, that's an issue. Oh, look at that, and you can't use that to negotiate because I'm not a licensed inspector, right? Just saying, hey, I have my limits. I can't just, you can use me for some advice, but there's things that, you would need in a professional opinion or a professional feedback on, such as an inspector, right? I can't tell you what the property, I can't survey their property for you. You have to get a surveyor. So different things like that. So this is default. So if you default, so all the things that we've signed and went over top, if you default, if the buyer fails, neglects, or refuses to perform buyer's obligation on this contract, including payment of deposit within the time specified, seller may elect to recover or retain the deposit for the account of seller as agreed upon, liquidated damages. So saying if you default, seller may elect to recover and retain the deposits. That $5,000, they can all go ahead and try. I mean, it has to be agreed upon. They can go to litigations, but saying, hey, they have the right to go ahead and try to claim it. Seller default, any reason other than the failure of seller to make seller's title marketable after reasonable diligent effort, seller fails neglects or refuses to perform seller's obligation on this contract, buyer may elect to receive return of buyer's deposit without thereby waiving any action for damages resulting from seller's breach in pursuant to paragraph 16. May seek to recover such damages or seek specific performance. On specific performance, what's the specific performance? It's the selling of the house to you, right? So you could go ahead and you could tie this up, because you know what happens sometimes? The seller might get backup offers. They might get a backup offer that's more money than yours. So they're going to go ahead and say, hey, listen, we're going to go ahead and make sure this deal falls through, that it fails, so we can take this other offer. Because they cannot get out of the contract just for whatever reason. Right? So you could go ahead and sue them, and we could go ahead and get them for specific performance, which is selling of the house, and make them sell the house. Now, I'm not saying you might not want to do that. Might be more of a headache. I've never had to do that, but it might be more of a headache than it's worth, but it is possible. So dispute resolution, different ways you could go ahead and dispute it, and how it's out to resolve it. There's a few different ways: attorney fees and costs. In Florida, you do not need an attorney, but if you do need an attorney, this is the section if we go into mediation or mediation or anything, arbitration or anything like that. This is where it talks about those costs. So standards, title evidence, we're not going to go. Title examination, after receipt, you want to review, the title. They're going to let you know if it's free or clear. So surveys that we've talked, surveys going to let you know the land, if anything is impeding on your property from someone else's lot. So say the fence, your neighbor's fence is on your property, the survey is going to let you know that. And obviously you want the seller to either handle it, or you're going to have to handle it afterwards, or you just don't make a big deal, because sometimes it could be a matter of an inch, 6 inches. But that's that. So we're going to kind of keep on going through here. Liens, it's, making sure that everything is close to liens or anything that the seller may owe on the property. The biggest lien is going to be your mortgage. It's a lien. But it could also be construction, additions to the house. And so just kind of standard things are going to have to be paid off at time of closing. Now time is how time is going to be calculated on the contract. So if it's 30 days, it's going to be used calendar days, right? And so it's not, it's not just business days. Now, if something did fall on a Saturday, like say one of the timelines ended on a Saturday, usually it does automatically move over to Monday or that following Monday, because there's some things you cannot do on the weekends, right? Because title companies are usually closed, banks are usually closed. So for those, now force majeure, obviously you could go ahead and get an extension. This is basically an act of God. Say you were supposed to close on the 24th of this month, and a hurricane came. We're in South Florida, obviously not this time of the year, but say a hurricane came and everything was closed down. Well, because of this force majeure clause in here, you are able to extend this contract, because there was no fault of your own. It was just something crazy that happened. Well, this happened a lot. It was a big thing when COVID came out, because a lot of things were shut down. Right? Conveyance is saying, hey, your seller shall convey marketable title, which is basically ownership. They have to convey that to you or transfer it over to you. So closing, this is closing location. Where it's going to close that has to be in Palm Beach County. Sorry about that. Closing documents. We won't go into this. Is just basically everything that the title company is going to go ahead and get done with you. And you're going to see a big stack of papers. Escrow closing procedure. Things in here. Prorations and credits. Here with my computer here. But proration and credits. So the following recurring items will be made current, if applicable, and prorated as of the day prior to closing or date of occupancy. All right, so you're going to be moving in. So let's just go ahead and say you have let's say you're moving in the month of April, right? I believe April has 30 days. Your HOA is $300 a month. That makes the HOA about $10 a day, right? So that's what your fee is, about $10 a day. Well, at the beginning of the month, the seller paid $300, even though he's only living there until, let's go ahead and just say, the 10th. So really, he only should be obligated to cover $100, but he already paid the $300. So guess what? In part of your closing costs is going to be that additional $200, which is going to be reimbursed or credited to the seller. Right, because you're going to be there the last 20 days, and he already paid the $300 for the whole month, but he's not going to be there the whole month. I hope that makes sense. Same thing with taxes. Taxes are done the same exact way. All right, so it's basically what prorations and credits are, right? One's going to get credited, the other one's going to get prorated. And it's just to make sure that, hey, the things that are being calculated based on a monthly or yearly basis, like your taxes, that way you're paying, hey, your fair share of it, and they paid their fair share of it. They paid the tax on the property for the time they were at the property. They're not paying for the whole year, right? And then you're not paying for the whole year if you're only there for 8 months. And so that's what the prorations and credits are. Access to the property to conduct appraisal, inspections, walkthrough. The seller has to give you, access to the property. You have to actually, give them some notice depending on the property. But you definitely want to give them. They have to let you in. If they don't let you in, that's an issue. And obviously, you can't honor the contract if they don't let you in. All right. So the risk of loss, I'm not going to go into there. It's all about if something happens to the property in the process of it. There goes my phone. My phone is ringing. It is probably my wife. Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. It was my wife. So let's go ahead. We're actually getting to the end here. All right, and so we got the 1031 exchange. This is going to be more for investment properties. The contract isn't recordable, right? So it's not going to be put in record in county record or public record or anything like that. Integration waiver, riders and addenda, or things that could be added to the contract. We're going to get there in about the next page or so. These are some things you don't really have to worry about, so we're going to kind of scroll on through them. Buyer waiver of claims. To the extent permitted by law, buyer waives any claims against the seller and against any real estate licensee involved in the negotiation of this contract for any damage or defects pertaining to the physical condition of the property that may exist at closing of this contract. So say you're not going to hold, another realtor, me, responsible, the seller responsible, to say you close on the house and in 3 months you find out the foundation is bad, right? Because the seller might not have known, and therefore, you're not going to hold any claims, right? This property is yours now. No one has anything to do with the property, but it is yours, and that's what that's saying. Then here we have the addendum or additional terms. So there's a few different documents depending on the property you're buying, right? So if you're moving into a property with an HOA, you want to go ahead and get an HOA addendum or homeowners association addendum. Usually the appraisal contingency is really smart to have because the appraisal will come in low. And if you don't have an appraisal contingency, you might have to come out of pocket for the difference in the appraisal value and purchase value or purchase price. So you want to make sure this is clicked, because if it's not clicked, even if you have an appraisal contingency signed, you don't have this clicked. Technically, you're saying, hey, this is not part of the contract. So having a click saying, hey, this is part of the contract here. Then we have lead paint disclosure. I clicked it here, but it was built before 1978. There's different ones. I'm not going to get into every single one of them. But those are those addendums that we were talking about. Obviously, additional terms. So these, if you want to add certain things, say maybe the house, you want the furniture. Say furniture included, right? Because maybe you couldn't fit up there, or maybe you're trying to get $5,000 back from the seller towards closing costs, and you would put that in the additional terms here. Then we have the counter offer. The seller could counter offer the buyer. They would click here, and they would give a counter offer and make some changes up there, which you would have to initial. Like I said, it's a negotiation. Until everyone signs, it's not a contract. And this is here basically saying, hey, these are the agents, listing agent and the buyer's agent involved in the contract or in the deal. And that is basically it right there. So I hope you guys learned something. If you guys have any questions, guys, please leave a comment. Or you have my phone number, give me a call. I'm more than willing and more than glad to help you guys out. So hope this helped you. And you guys have a wonderful day.